Screen, new space. Audio's working. Beautiful. Okay, so welcome to ES6 Breakout. AKA, as I said, the only lecture that Nima does with slides, except for the week 1, day 1 breakout. Today's topics. A little bit of an agenda here because the ES6 breakout, this is a bit of like a fruit salad of like interesting JavaScript things. I'm just going to show you like a whole list of just things where you'll go like, ooh, that's cool, right? And then here's another thing, you go, ooh, that's cool too. Ooh, that's cool. That's the whole lecture, is I'm just showing you a couple new things. There's a cohesive kind of thought to it, but we'll kind of see that as we go along. First question, what the heck is ES6? What does it mean? We're going to answer that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the JavaScript ecosystem and look at some ES6 features. And we'll kind of see how far we get along with it. ES6. It's in the game, right? This is ECMAScript 6. ES6 stands for ECMAScript 6. What the heck is ECMAScript? ECMAScript is the European Computer Manufacturers Association. So I think I mentioned that like group of nerds this morning that sit up on their mountaintop, like coming up with HTTP, right? This is a similar group of nerds. You get together and they argue over, but I think JavaScript should have square brackets for, and like that's their whole job. Is a bunch of people that get together and argue over this stuff. They call themselves ECMA, and they put together a specification for a language, right? They'll say, okay, as ECMA, we say that ECMAScript should have for loops, and it should have optional semicolons, and all this other stuff. And they say it. They don't actually build the language. They just say that these are the things that the language should have, right? So JavaScript is an implementation of that standard, right? So ECMAScript is the standard. JavaScript is the actual language as it gets built out. Now, these nerds put together a standard, every couple years, right? ECMAScript 6. It's the 6th one, unless I'm wrong about that. Am I wrong about that, Kenny? ES6 is the 6th standard? They didn't do weird name, like numbering or anything, right? Okay, so ES6, 6th one. We got ES7. There's an ES8. ES next. Right? ES7. I think there's ES8 as well. Nope. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. They do years now? Yeah. And then I know there's ES next, which is things that are coming. It's tomorrow's JavaScript today, right? Because JavaScript is evolving, right? JavaScript is evolving, and there's a couple reasons for it. Now, first thing that I want to point out before we look at why JavaScript evolves and what these new features are is that ES5, the 5th edition, was released in 2009. ES6 was released in 2015. It's a different world. Different world. Right? So, honestly, beginning of the Obama administration, end of the Obama administration. That's the time in between, and things changed. So it was a pretty big update. People were really excited about it. And you see a lot of people attach ES6 to their resumes. Right? I know JavaScript, in parentheses ES6. As if that's some new thing. So, why do we need new standards? Why? I've got two kind of points here. First is people find better ways of expressing themselves. Right? People find better ways of expressing themselves, and the language that we use, right, changes to reflect that. So, I might have started a lecture years ago with, yo, word to mother, we're about to, whatever, and I'd throw out some slang that just isn't cool anymore. Maybe last year, I would have ended a lecture with, dab on the haters, right, or whatever. And now, the way that we've expressed ourselves has changed, right, and I've actually fallen out of touch with, like, common slang now. So whatever people say nowadays, that's what we use. Right. Just trying to show that like there's a human element to this. Right? We find ways to express ourselves better, so we change the tools that we use to express ourselves to fit that. You're going to see examples of that as I look at things that have changed with ES6. Second here is that the problems that we face change over time, right? So we come up with better words or better phrasing, but more like advanced constructs in our language to solve those problems. Okay, teeny bit of JavaScript history. JavaScript is a language that didn't just pop out of the sky. It didn't just land. JavaScript is a language originally built by one person who took inspiration from other languages. Right? I'll take a little bit of inspiration from Scheme and from Python and from Perl. Right? They're not languages that you need to know anything about, but you might take it as a thing like, oh, if I really like this part of JavaScript, right? Maybe if you're like a language geek, you might find it interesting to dig and see where does this part of JavaScript come from, right? JavaScript was originally made by a person named Brendan Eich for Netscape Navigator, right? A browser in 1994. So at the time, browsers were for looking at HTML pages, right? Styled with a bit of CSS. And then the people who were building Netscape Navigator said, you know what? We want websites to have some interactivity to them, right? We want to have a little programming language that we can use to code up little programs for the websites. So Brendan Eich spends 10 days coding up this language. It's JavaScript. So if it sometimes feels like JavaScript's been like hacked together in a couple days, it's partly because it has been, right? This stuff got constructed all at once, and it became a much bigger deal than people thought it was going to be. Have y'all heard of Java? Okay. Java and JavaScript, not the same thing, and not even remotely related as far as languages go with how they work here. Java is to JavaScript as ham is to hamster. Not the same thing. But when Brendan Eich made JavaScript, Java was really popular. So as a marketing kind of, gimmick, let's get more views, they named the language JavaScript, so that people, you get that SEO up. This people would think that it's related. Just tricky stuff. Okay, so in order to understand this whole idea of new standards rolling out, we need to get a little comfortable with the idea of the JavaScript ecosystem. JavaScript is a language, right? And that language needs to be interpreted by something, right? We need to have some program that can hear the language and interact with it, right? And run programs. Over the course of the bootcamp, we're running JavaScript in two places. The client side, so browsers, and the server side, so Node.js. So far, you've just been doing stuff in Node. In the bootcamp, soon you will start doing stuff on the client side as well. But really what's going on is that both on the browser side and on the server side, there's a program that can read JavaScript code and do something with it and understand it. So on the server side, like Node has a thing built into it called V8, the V8 JavaScript engine. All it does is it reads JavaScript code and it runs the JavaScript code. Whoops. On the client side, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, browsers have to have an engine built into them. So Chrome uses the V8 engine. Firefox uses this thing called SpiderMonkey. Right? But they're different programs that, again, read some JavaScript and do stuff with them. They're built by different people, though. V8 is built by Google. SpiderMonkey, I think, is built by Mozilla. These people at different companies need to agree on a protocol for how these engines are going to work. So they rely on ECMA, right? They read the ECMAScript definition, and they put together a program that behaves according to what ECMAScript says. And the thing is, the people at Google might tack on a couple extra features that aren't in ECMAScript. Like they might tack on a couple things that the people at Mozilla don't. That's why sometimes we have browsers that act differently, right? Because they fit a standard up to a point, and then each of them might do special things. Does that feel kind of okay as an idea? Right? Okay, so that being said, ES6 gets rolled out as a standard, and there's, you know, a period of time where all these other companies like Google or Mozilla or Apple have to take the stuff that gets rolled out as the standard for ES6 and implement that. So up until, you know, a little while ago, and even sometimes you'll run into things that just can't run ES6 code, right? For our purposes of the lecture and for our purposes of the bootcamp, everything can run ES6, right? If that sentence doesn't make sense, it's fine. We're going to clean that up a little bit. So ES6, you're going to see, just introduces a whole bunch of new features that improve your quality of life. First one up, for of and for in. So you might have already talked about for of and for in. Has anybody seen this stuff before? Right? Cool, because there's different ways of looping over stuff. Right? If I'm just going to hop into the console, there's different ways of looping over stuff. If I have an array called dogs, Spot, Bartholomew, and we had Frida, I can loop through this array by doing things like for let, you know, I'm going to use var right now. I'm going to say for var I equals 0, I is less than dogs.length, I++, and I'll say something like console.log dogs I. We're comfortable with the fact that this prints out every dog. I get back Spot, Bartholomew, and Frida. Right? ES6 just gives us a whole new loop that we could use, right? The for, I'm going to do the in first. I'm going to say for var thing in dogs, console log whatever thing is. What did I get back? I got the index. So the for in, it's just nicer syntax for doing exactly this, right? If I'm going to be looping over every element in the array, what do I have to write this condition and the plus plus for, right? It just feels like extra work. So the ECMAScript people said, okay, you can do for in, right, to get the index. So when I see in, I think index. There's also for of. What did for of do? Got me the values, right? Just another nice shorthand. Instead of me having to do this whole thing where I get the index and I have to go, okay, grab it from the array, right? That stuff is all just written inside of for of. Again, nice shorthand. Do you need to use this? Absolutely not, right? There's other ways of looping through an array. If you feel comfortable with just sticking to this, perfect, right? But you might find that your code becomes more legible if you use for in or for of for different situations. Now, the thing about these for in and of is that they work with, or rather one of these works well with objects as well. If I went, let's go var, Vancouver. For Vancouver, we're going to say size, big, weather, mostly rainy, and then what else is, okay, we got trees, many. Okay, just some things in an object. Right, I've got this object called Vancouver. I can do a for var thing in Vancouver. And console log thing. So this is a for in over an object. And if I do this, what did I get back? Got the keys. I got all the keys. Right? So this is just one nice way to loop over all the keys in an object. Right? Might be useful. There are other ways to do this. I actually don't even want to show you. Okay, well, there's object.keys of a thing, like Vancouver. Gives you an array of all the keys. But this is just such a pain to have to go through object keys Vancouver and then loop over that array when you could just say for var thing in Vancouver. Okay? And you can name that anything you want. So I wrote var thing. I could say var key in Vancouver. Right? That's fine. Now, what if I did for var key of Vancouver? What would happen? One would think. Instead, I just get an error. So you can for in over an object, but you can't for of over an object. Just a decision that the ES people put together. They're like, nope, you can't. If I wanted to grab the values, I would have to go like that. Right? Does this feel comfortable to people? Right? I'd have to use for in and just use the key to get the thing in the object. Right? Again, not necessarily something you have to do. This is all just quality of life stuff, right? So if you feel that there's still other things that you want to understand before you move on to this, that's totally fine. Now I've got big, mostly rainy, and many. Cool. How are we feeling about for in and for of? Pretty good? Cool. You started working on Tiny App at this point, correct? Can you think of places where you might use a for in Tiny App? You already did. Well, I mean, if you did it, right? Like, yeah. There you go. So the thing instructs you to do it, but just a heads up if you haven't done it. Cool. Next thing over here is let and const and var. So let and const and var are a bit of a weird situation. Up until ES6, we had var. If you wanted to make variables, you'd have to say var name equals Steve. I'd have to use var every time. Var has some weird behaviors, or some kind of like unexpected behaviors if you're not fully familiar with what's going on underneath. So I'm going to just refresh this page so I lose. Whoa, stop. Oops. What? Still have. Alright, it's all good. Just gonna make a new window. Zoop. And console. Okay. Name is also a protected thing, so I shouldn't touch that. Let's go dog. Okay, so there's no such thing as dog at the moment in my program. Can we agree on that? Okay. If, and I'm making myself my own scope here, I've done 2 curly braces, not to make an object, but to write a bunch of code that just lives within scope. Are we comfortable with that idea? You're never going to have to do this, but I'm doing it for demonstrative purposes. I'm going to write console.log dog, and I get an error, right? So if I try to console.log something that doesn't exist, I get dog is not defined. Okay. I am going to write console log dog and also write var dog equals spot underneath. When I press enter, what's going to happen? Right, so you're thinking spot's going to get printed, and why is that? But when do we do the console log? Before or after the definition? Right, so that's where the issue is. What var does is it hoists dog, but it doesn't hoist the definition of dog. So if I run this right now, I actually get undefined. Right? I get undefined. Which is weird because I was expecting to get at least this error, dog is not defined. Instead I'm getting undefined. I'm just going to refresh this. Right, so I get undefined. Also, do you remember when I did that lecture on scope? I was talking about how when things pop, like when a scope is finished, all the variables are supposed to disappear. Technically, I shouldn't still have access to dog. But I do. And that's annoying. So var does these things. Var over here, let me hop into, so if this here is the code, what var does is it takes this, pastes it up there, and goes dog equals spot. This is what hoisting means. Is it confusing? I hope so. It's really confusing. I don't like it at all. Anytime you see a var statement, var hello equals world, JavaScript, without your permission, what it does is it takes this and turns it into that. Every time. Not only that, but if I have a bunch of code, var hello world, and up here I have a bunch of other stuff, console log, what up, and 1 plus 2, console.log hello. If I have all this code, ignore the stuff above it. If I have all this stuff, what var does is, again, it takes this and it puts it right at the top of the file, right, or right at the top of the code. But you didn't intend that, probably. When you wrote this code, you didn't, like, I didn't write it knowing that that was what was going to happen, right? Yes.
Why didn't it put it on top of the previous one?
What do you mean?
Like when you went to infect?
This one?
Yeah, why didn't it put it on top of before like the console log?
Right, so it did, technically. It did here. If I did console log dog, I should get back an error.
Yeah, but why didn't
Right.
you find them?
Because what's happening now is it's splitting it up, so it goes up here, var dog, and turning that into that. Right? So as I do this right now, I get back undefined, because that's what happens when I have like var potato, and I try to console log potato. I get back undefined. Right? That's what happens when you declare a variable but don't define it. Right? So that's what hoisting is doing. It's just confusing. And it's also gross that I still have access now to dog outside of that scope. Right? It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's counterintuitive to what a lot of people expect var to do, right? Especially like newer devs. So with ES6, what we get is let and const. Right? Let is not affected by hoisting. So if I go here and I go console.log dog, and I go let dog equal spot, I get back an error, right? I get back an error, which I do expect. Dog is not defined. Because I'm trying to use dog before I ever wrote the definition. So let is not affected by hoisting. It doesn't have hoisting. Right? It's more intuitive to somebody who's like starting off with JavaScript. On top of this, let's say that I do put dog is spot here. If I try to access dog outside of that scope, I get dog is not defined. So dog now with let is not affected by hoisting, and it respects scope. We're also given access to a thing called const now. Const with ES6. They give us const. Right here, I'm not seeing any difference. If I go dog out here, also no difference. So as far as I've shown you, const behaves exactly like let in terms of hoisting and in terms of access in scopes. The one difference is, if I do let me go let pizza equal cheese. With a let, I can go pizza equals anchovies. I'm allowed to do that. If instead I tried to do that with a const, and then I went pizza equals anchovies, get a big ol' error. With const, you can set things equal to one time. When you make the const, you can set it equal to something. After that, that's it, as far as assignment goes. Right? This is useful for a couple reasons. I might want to make sure that pizza stays at cheese. And if there's some code in my code base that changes pizza, I might decide that that's a bug. Right? So if I set it to const, right, anytime somebody tries to change that value, they're not allowed because of a built-in kind of kill switch in the language. And that's good. It's like an extra kind of security. Right. Now, that's not to say that like we're set with a value as soon as we use const. For example, if I go const Vancouver, and I do that whole thing again, which was size, let's say medium. I can't remember what the size of Vancouver put it as. Trees, a bunch. And let me just say like weather, rainy. This is a const, so I can't set Vancouver equal to something with a change in it. Like, oh no, I'm going to say weather is sunny now. That I'm not allowed to do. But what I am allowed to do is say Vancouver dot weather is sunny. Because I'm not reassigning Vancouver, I'm reassigning a property of Vancouver. And that's going to feel weird for right now, maybe. You'll kind of get it with time. Are we feeling okay with let and const? Right? From now on, do not use var. Right? From now on, don't use var anymore at all. You'll see var in like other people's code or like documentation. Change that to let, right? Or better yet, any new code that you write, use const. Use const by default. And if you find that you have to reassign, then you can go ahead and change your const to let. Right? That's a good standard to be in, is use const by default, and then if you have to, change it to let. Here's another example. If I did pizzas, cheese, pepperoni, and anchovies, and I wanted to add a pizza to this. Pizzas is an array, and often types of things like arrays will give you methods that you can use to modify them. So I could go pizzas.push, and I'm going to push another cheese to it. And now when I check pizzas, pizzas is cheese, pepperoni, anchovies, cheese. Right? Maybe I want to remove an item from the end, pizzas.pop. And when I check pizzas, now that's there. This isn't a lesson in push and pop, so if you want, like, you can read into that. But what I'm trying to show you is that when you make something const, it's not the end of the world. Right? There's often ways to change it, but notice that I deliberately have to go ahead and say pizzas pop. Right. Cool. So that is let, const, and var. Again, if you just think of it as var hoists, and that's confusing, so never use it. Let creates block scope variables, doesn't hoist, and const is essentially let, but you can only assign once. Okay. The let and const, I mean, those are pretty big changes to the language in terms of like, I really want you to use that stuff. Right? I really want you to use let and const and never use var. The next couple things that I'm going to show you, not necessarily like the most important in terms of like you have to do it. First one is fancy string interpolation. So if I wanted to, if I had like a let, you know, we'll do let name, hello name equals Brenda, and I wanted to make a string that said hello Brenda. I could go hello and then like hello name. Is this comfortable for people? Right? The thing is, like, as I have more things to maybe like stick together, like hello age is, Brenda is one of the ancient ones, 10,000 years old. So if I wanted to say, hello Brenda, you are hello age years old. Like that. I already made a mistake. I forgot to put a plus in here. Hello Brenda, you are 10,000 years old. This is just a nightmare to look at already. All the pluses, all the spaces that I have to remember to put in, right? Because if I forget one of the spaces, now it's stuck together, right? So instead, the JavaScript people came up with a whole new type of string that you can create with backticks. Little cute backticks, right? Am I the only one who thinks these things are adorable? They're so small. No? They look like, if you see, like, they just remind me of these. As soon as, as soon as I see it, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. They're just little cute ticks. Let me write a whole bunch of stuff here. Hello, Brenda. No, not Brenda. Hello, $. Just new syntax for taking variables and putting them inside of a string. Right? Hello, Brenda, you are age years old. Right? Ends up being a little bit shorter than this, right? But also, once you get used to it, a heck of a lot more legible. Right? Fancy string interpolation. Yes. A new line like in here? I think you should be able to do it with a \n. Yeah. Right? So hello, you are whatever years old. You can do that with normal strings as well, though. Hello, \n world. That'll print it like that. The thing is, with normal strings, if I do hello, and then I make a new line and I go world, this is a broken string. But with backticks, I can go hello space new line world like this, and that'll just work. So that's pretty bizarre. It's cool. What's that? I like doing backticks and just making a new line, just because it's more legible to me. As soon as I see the \n, I just start going like, I don't like it, right? Like, it's just like, ugh. I don't want to see stuff in here that I'm not supposed to see. I know I'm saying that, and then this one has the $, right? But like the $, I'm just like, hello $, right? Like I just like I'm happy about that, and I know what's going on. But the \/ is, so that's that. Again, fancy string interpolation. Do you need to do it? No. But this improves your quality of life if you so choose to use it. And it's an example of what we call syntactic sugar. Like, I've shown you like a way to do the thing with normal quotes and with backticks, right? And they do the exact same thing, right? But one is just like, sweeter. It's so nice. Syntactic sugar, right? I invite you to Google that. Where do you go here? Syntactic sugar. You know? It's a real term, right? Makes things easier to read or express. Okay, let's move on. This here, arrow functions. Okay, I'm gonna say something, and then I'm gonna be sort of wrong about it, and I'll explain why. Okay, arrow functions are a shorter syntax for your normal function expressions, right? But there's a twist. The twist is not super important right now. It will be important in week 6. So if you can just bear until week 6 until you fully understand the difference, then that's cool, right? Because from now until week 6 is not going to matter. Arrow functions have a shorter syntax. So you might have found yourself writing the word function, say hello, right? You've written the word function, it does a thing, and then I can use it as a function. It's cool, whatever. You've also found out that you can save functions in variables, correct? I can do this and save the function say hello into some function. You've also found out that I don't even need the name of this function, right? Am I correct in saying that? Right? What is it called when I do this? No. What's that? It's called anonymous, right? This is, whoops. Let me just get rid of the name. Yeah. This is an anonymous function. Right? Anonymous meaning I didn't give this function literal a name. I've saved it in a variable, and now I can go some function, wham. You've played around with this idea, maybe if not directly, right? You've been doing this stuff. You said the word callback, and that's exactly where you've seen this. For example, in your Express stuff that you might have started working on, apt-get to slash takes a callback that's often, as we had you write it so far, written like this. Now, some people get bummed out about having to write the word function over and over again. Just like, man, I don't want to write all this stuff. So instead what you can do, and I'm just going to rewrite this some function. What you can do is delete the word function. And just get rid of let because I already declared it. And turn this here into this cute little fat arrow. So cute. Just a nice little arrow. Still does the exact same thing. Nothing has changed. Right? I went from writing function parentheses to writing parentheses fat arrow. Can we agree that this, like, there's no other change? And technically, there's nothing really that I have to say about this other than that. Right? Like, this is it. These are arrow functions. Except for the fact that there's a little bit of niceness that you can use. So, I'm going to start defining a couple of arrow functions just in line. Arrow functions can only be saved to variables. Right? So, if you make an arrow function, you have to save it in a variable. So, I might go let new func equals, and I'll make this a function that doesn't take anything, doesn't take any parameters, and returns back a smiley face. And if I go new func, what? I didn't write the return statement. I just went fat arrow and then I wrote the return value right here. Right? Nice shorthand. Because otherwise what I would have had to write was this. Not the end of the world. But when you're making a lot of functions, honestly, it's like if a function only has one line in it, why not rewrite it to something like this? Right? So for example, here's another function, say hi to. This one here is going to take a name, and it's going to return back a string that says hello, hello name. Right? I know the syntax is a bit funky, but if you translate it in your head as being like, oh, this here is the return statement for this arrow function, right? It'll become clear that we can say hi to Cersei. Anybody hyped about Game of Thrones? Yeah. And now I've returned the string hello Cersei. Is that a question? Right. So I could put parentheses around it, and it will still work the exact same way. But since I only have one parameter to pass to this, the ES6 specification says, you know what? You could even omit the parentheses, just for cleanliness. Right? If I have multiple parameters, name and age, you are right, multiple parameters, then I have to surround them with parentheses. Right? Just a design decision. Right? The people who made ES6 decided, hey, you know what? If you only have one param, you don't even need the brackets. You can keep them in if you want. Like, if you like having the brackets in there, by all means, keep them. Right? But this here now, my say hi to is going to take Cersei and also 10,000. If it's 0 arguments, then you need the 2 empties. Yeah. So all this, does it feel fine? Right? From now on, what I'm going to recommend is when you need to make callbacks, when you need to make a callback somewhere, such as, do you know how map works? Right? Instead of writing out function element return element times 2, I might instead write it out as map given element return element times 2. See how they do the exact same thing, but this is just squished into just the important information. Right? There's just less space for me to make mistakes, really. Right? Like, I won't spell function wrong because I don't have to write out the word function. Right? Fewer keystrokes. Something that I do want to point out, though, is that say I wanted to do multiple things with my function and not just have a return statement. Arrow functions will take in curly braces, and from here on, then they will work like regular functions. Or I could do, let new val equal element times 2, and then I'll have to say return new val. So if you use curly braces with your arrow functions, you're going to need the word return. Okay. All this stuff, all the examples that I'm doing, I have in a demo file that I've commented thoroughly, and you can go through and just kind of check to see what each one of these does. Right? So we looked at template literals, we just looked at arrow functions, right? Arrow functions, and I have a couple examples of that. There are okay, so I'm just gonna say something for arrow functions, I briefly mentioned that arrow functions do not rebind this. I think I kind of said that, or rather I had it on the slides and I didn't say it. That's not an issue right now, but in week 6 you'll understand the real kind of implications of it. For the moment, let me just show you this. It's good implications in terms of there. So here, I know I've written this with var, but just bear with me. If I have weather, rainy, and weather object has weather inside of it, and I call weather object dot get that returns this dot weather. Notice that this is written as an arrow function. I get back rainy. If I use the almost identical code that says weather is rainy, weather is sunny on the inside, so almost identical. See, rainy, sunny. The only difference is that I've written this get as a function as opposed to an arrow function. I get back sunny instead. Right? I don't want you to fully understand this right now. Right? There's going to be like a full-on lecture about this stuff eventually. Right now it's just like a heads up so you don't feel like I lied to you. Right? But from now on, in your callbacks, use arrow functions. Can we all agree on that? So in Express, use arrow functions for your callbacks, for request and response. Okay. So that being said, a couple smaller things that I want to show you. I'm going to not even run this code. There's this idea called destructuring objects that got introduced in ES6. Getting values out of arrays one by one is annoying. It's boring. It's lame. Right? How do you get the first and second value out of an array? You have to go let r. it's just a lot of work. Instead, what ES6 lets you do is I could go, let first tomato being set to the first and second values of the array. Destructuring. Syntactic sugar, nice quality of life stuff. You can also do the same thing with objects. So if I had an object such as, do I still have Vancouver in here? Yeah, I'm just going to make it. Here's Vancouver. Say I wanted to get the size and the trees into a variable. Right? ES6 just lets me do this. Right? Almost identical to what we did for the array, where now I have a variable called size and a variable called trees. I do not have a variable called weather. Okay, I do because I made it before. This was a bad example, but it's not this one, right? Like, weather was not set by this thing. Was that confusing? Do you want me to clear that up? Destructuring objects, just nice shorthand. Otherwise, what I could do is, I would have gone let size equals Vancouver.size, right? And let trees equal Vancouver.trees. So you squish that into one line. Okay, so that is destructuring, and the opposite of it, sort of, is this thing called spreading. So spreading is going to allow me to take either an array or an object and let it stretch out wherever it's kind of necessary to have it stretch. I always think of it as like the array is like a bit of butter on a knife, and spreading is like spreading it out as far as it needs to go. Right? And this is going to make sense if I do this. I have one array, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 5 apparently. 1, 2, 3, 5. And maybe I have another array that's a bunch of other numbers. And I want to join these two arrays. 3 dots. Right? Just a nice thing that they've added to the language. I see the 3 dots as like spread out array 1 and then spread out array 2. Right? I don't know if that visual helps you. Now I've got them joined together. Right? Anytime I want to add like things to an array, like maybe I want array 1 to also have some strings in it. Right? I've got everything from R1 and then haha and woo. Right? I don't need to do this in some particular order, by the way. I could go do haha, then everything from R1 and then woo. And I've got that. Same idea works with objects. So if I have object 1 is A1, B2, 2. And I have obj3, not 3, 2 is C3. I can join these two objects together by going ... obj1 ... obj2. And it'll merge the objects together. I mean, this is beast. I want to make maybe a new object that has everything from object 1, everything from object 2, and then also D4. Right? New object has everything from object 1, everything from object 2, and D4. Right? In one nice line. One nice expression. There's other ways to do this, but this is nice enough. Cool. So I have, I think, one more thing in here that... Oh, no, I guess I don't. I have some information about transpilers and polyfills. They're not necessary. But what I do want to say is that I haven't shown you everything that there is in ES6. Big changes. You don't have to care about all of them, but I've shown you like the big ones. If you want, you could go to es6features.org, which is a website where somebody has put together a fairly nice kind of list of all of the changes to ES6. So for example, I talked about arrow functions. You can go to arrow functions and they'll show you what you used to have to do and what you do now. Right? You're like, oh, I didn't talk about... let me go... There's some stuff in here like... Trying to find something that's not too nuts. String... Okay, well here's string interpolation. Right? This is what we used to do. Adding strings together. This is what we can do now. So just a nice website if you want to bookmark this for future reference. I do want to end it by saying that, like, again, you don't need to care about all these changes. Right? Often, new changes to a language, it's just cool stuff, but you're not forced to kind of look at it. Any questions? Okay, so major takeaways, I think, are arrow functions, let and const, string interpolation is nice, and that, for me, is really about it. For of and for in. Those things. So the things I showed at the beginning. Cool. Notes will be sent out in a minute. As I mentioned, I have this commented demo that I recommend taking a look at. And have a great rest of the day. Oh, question. For in? Yeah, regular for loop. In gets you all the index things, right? Are you thinking for of? To get through an object without for in, like the index, the keys of it, what you would do is object keys of a thing that gets you the, like say I had Vancouver for some reason, which I don't, there you go. It would get you all the keys, so you'd have to go, okay, well to an array, and then you'd have to loop over that array, right? And that's just extra work, right? Cool. And no questions from this side? Dope. Talk to you later.